ancient times, extending from the mainland, was surrounded by powerful kingdoms, with their eyes set upon taking possession of this land. This is the location which allowed contact with people across land and sea, and by extension, the Korean people were on the receiving end of a wide range of influences from the surrounding kingdoms, influences which included wars and conflicts which never seemed to end. Families were torn apart. Divergences in perspectives have been generated as a result of political instability and the division of the country itself. South Koreans are hardworking people, to the point where education has been made accessible to all of the country's citizens. Their political views are open, and their culture has been promoted in alignment with the world's trends. Korean pop songs are listened to by people all over the world. Korean drama series have become a topic of discussion on a very wide scale. This is a highly competitive society that has triumphed over other countries in many dimensions. And yet there still remain certain areas of this society whose potential has been buried and restricted. These are the areas occupied by women. Ties of Confucianism in South Korean society. South Korea has bravely pulled through a number of crises, such as the IMF. The people brought down the military dictatorship and promoted cultural trends on an international level. They transformed their small country into an economic and cultural leader. South Korea endured pressures from the surrounding larger countries, and these periods of oppression had pushed the country into its role of an independent survivor. The suffering of the people in recent history has trained South Koreans to live by certain sets of values to this very day. It appears to be a national mission to create and sustain an idealistic society. We see competition in all areas. Competitiveness is trained into the mindsets of South Koreans from birth to death. These signs communicate demands, which are part of the country's protest culture. Protests are a normal phenomenon, since people here hold to the idea that stress needs to be released and that it's the right thing to do.
여기에 계신 분들은 초창기 때 코로나 백신 부작용으로 인해서 사망하신 분들입니다. 그래서 작년에 이 유족 협회가 만들어지면서 가족분들이 원하시는 분들에 한해서 이분들의 영정 사진을 여기에다 이렇게 걸어놓고 이렇게 분향소를 마련하게 되었습니다. 네, 그래서 시민들이 자발적으로 분향소를 찾는 그런 형국이 되겠습니다.
The stresses in the lives of some South Koreans don't only concern politics. Education is also a prime source of pressure for students. The way the educational system presents itself stems from the concept of Yangban, which is a Korean Confucian form of a scholarly official operating during the Joseon dynasty. The Yangban were part of the ruling class of dynastic Korea, mainly composed of highly educated aristocrats. Only men were allowed to take the Yangban examinations. But what about women? What roles and duties did women have? Before the Joseon era, men and women held equal rights in holding property and occupying ranks and titles. But during Joseon, the status of women was reduced and their roles were limited within the home.
이화여자대학교는 1886년에 이화학당으로 시작을 했는데요. 한국 최초의 여성 교육기관이고 지속적으로 여성 교육을 이어오다가 1945년에 한국 최초의 종합대학교로 승격을 해서 지금까지의 그 명성을 이어오고 있습니다.
The entry of Westerners in the 1880s brought American missionaries into South Korea. UED Women's University was set up to bridge the inequality gap that Korean women had to endure. If one accomplishes success in entrance examinations into the country's top universities, this is considered a pathway towards security in one's life. Security for one's family follows from there onwards.
그러면 저는 근데 다시 생각해보니까 또 한국 학생들이 되게 힘든 삶을 살고 있다는 생각이 드는데, 왜냐면 어릴 때부터 어떤 사교육을 엄청 많이 받고, 그리고 고등학교 때도 뭐 솔직히 하루 종일 공부를 하고 그 생활이 계속 반복되다 보니까 또 자기 정체성에 대해서 고민할 시간이나 그런 시간이 부족해서 저는 이 교육 제도가 좀 잘못된 것 같긴 한 것 같아요. 보통 한 3시 반에 3시 반에 끝났나? 학교 몇 시에 끝났더라? 4시쯤에 끝났다고 치면은 야자가 한 9시, 10시까지 있고 또 밤까지 하는 거는 한 11시 반인가? 까지 있기 때문에 그때까지 그냥 학교에서 공부하는 날도 있고 아니면 학원 갔다가 또 공부, 뭐 독서실 가고 이런 날도 있었던 것 같아요.
Following times of war and conflict, South Koreans had to battle forward with the knowledge acquired from the few resources that they had. Many government administrations pushed for education access for the general public. From previous times in which the majority of the population were illiterate, the early 1990s then saw a massive increase in the literacy rate up to almost 90%. When this happened, the people were finally able to read, write, and understand politics. Competitiveness in the educational scene of this country is considered extremely aggressive.
어쨌든 공부를 하는 학생이다 보니까 뭐 시험도 봐야 되고 과제도 해야 되고 그런 부분에서 뭔가 체력적으로 힘들 때도 있고 아니면 어쨌든 앞서 말했던 것처럼 시험 때문에 정신적으로 스트레스를 받을 때는 있는데 제가 원하는 전공에서 공부를 하고 있기 때문에 사실 뭔가 공부하는 것 자체는 되게 즐겁고 이런 어려움 그리고 스트레스는 누구나 가지고 있을 거라고 생각을 해서 네, 그런 것 같아요. 저 같은 경우에는 학교에서 뭐 공부를 할 때도 있는데 보통 일하러 자주 가는 것 같아요.
Hanju takes us to the tutorial school where she works as an assistant teacher of English language. This district is full of Hagwon schools. These Hagwons are organized for students to have lessons one-on-one or in classrooms. Hanju's job is to help the students to get test scores that will gain them entry into one of the country's top 3 universities.
As you can see, students have to do some tasks such as memorizing the reading material or memorize vocabulary, and they also have to solve many English problems related to the test. So for that time, I go into the class and check if they did memorize the things well, and the score, I kind of write the scores of the test that they took. So those are my roles that I do instead of the teacher.
For Hanju, her entry into UED University was due to having studied at this Hagwon school. After gaining entry into the prestigious university, she then became an assistant teacher to help the younger students. Parents tend to push their children into attending these extra studies from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. There was a time when it was illegal to attend test prep schools late into the night. But there are parents out there who want their children to accomplish higher standards than other children in their age group.
Students are preparing for the test, they do not have like kind of classes with foreigner teachers. They focus on preparing the test. So when they do their things well and when they do they complete their task, they can go home. But usually they do not do them in time because there are so many things to do, and they have to like memorize things. So it makes kind of students stressful. So they go home.
Parents spend 1/3 of their income on their children's tuition fees at these test prep schools, and the tuition fees are getting higher, especially in the area of English language studies. This is a prime factor that has made the average South Korean family have an average of only 1.2 children due to the unexpected rise in these extra tuition fees. The stresses of study life don't end with graduation. They carry on into work life. Once they are settled into their careers, then they have to deal with social expectations in regards to marriage and family. These expectations add to the pressures suffered among the respective age groups. Women especially are experiencing the pressure both inside and outside the home, which means that they are generally facing more pressure than men.
만나서 남성과의 관계에서부터 학교 생활할 때부터 많은 차별들을 느꼈었고 특히 이제 결혼하고 아이를 키우면서 더더욱 느꼈었던 것 같아요.
묻는 거거든요.
그러니까 옛날에는 나 고등학교 다닐 때는 우리 아버지가 여자들이 밖에 나가서 웃고 다니는 것도 안 된다고 했었어. 그런데 내 직업이 조금 직장이 좀 특이해서 그랬는지 내가 일을 잘해서 그랬는지 모르겠는데 난 남자애들이 다 내 밑에서 죄송합니다 했던 거밖에 기억이 안 나서 진짜로 그렇게 내가 뭐라고 얘기를 못 하겠네.
이제 그 전에 지금 얘기했던 것처럼 근데 뭐 아버지가 뭐 웃지도 말라고 이런 교육을 이제 시켰잖아요. 그 시대에는 그랬을 때 어떤 그 어려움 같은 게 있었는지.
어려움 없었어. 그러는가 보다 하는 거지. 뭐라고요? 뭐라고?
Lee Kyung-hee is a 60-year-old business owner. The journey of building a financial foundation hasn't been easy. She's the eldest daughter of the family, so she has had to work very hard to support her younger siblings in place of her parents, who passed away over a decade earlier. Since then, she has carried the role of eldest sister on her shoulders.
학비는 아니고 이제 결혼해서 살면서 힘들 때 도와준 적 있지. 다 도와줬지. 전부 다 돈 송금해주고 뭐 사주고 뭐. 내가 엄마니까. 엄마 안 계시니까 내가 엄마잖아. 당연히 해야 되는 거야.
The capacity for South Korean women to become head of a household has only been a recent legal phenomenon. In the past, society was governed by the Japanese-introduced Hoju-J patriarchal family registration system. Women's legal rights were restricted within family relationships, since the gender discriminatory practice dictated that a household must have a male head of the family. A woman was only a member of her husband's family.
옛날에는 집에만 있었잖아요. 근데 지금은 밖에 나가서 일하는 게 더 많은 것 같아.
그러니까.
70% 정도 되는 것 같은데.
다시 묻는 거야. 직장 생활할 때 이제 그 아기 낳을 때 육아 휴직 같은 게 옛날에 있었느냐?
있었어.
옛날에는 없었지.
있었어. 나 때는.
깊이.
나 때는 있었고
네,
나 전
언제쯤이죠? 그때가 한 몇 년도?
그러니까 그때가 90년대지.
옛날에 뭐 어떻게 남편이 뭐 이렇게 집안 살림이나 애들 뭐 이제 도와준 적이 많이 있는지 아니면 혼자 스스로 하신 건지.
혼자 스스로 했지.
남편이 도와주고 한 건 많지 않고요.
없지 거의. 그러니까 이제 그런 것 때문에 그런 것 때문에 그렇게 됐지. 깨지게 된 거지.
In this day and age, the status of women has improved. A woman can choose her own spouse. She can choose to marry, divorce, or not marry at all. These decisions are made of a woman's own free will. But during the Shōsun era, the role and status of women were clearly dictated. Love and romance were not a matter of mutual agreement between two people, since the husband was the only one who can make the decision to divorce.
당연하다고 생각해요. 네. 여성 입장에선 결혼해서 좋을 게 하나도 없거든요. 한국에서 여자들은 혼자 살면 되게 편하게 돈도 많이 모으면서 살 수 있는데 결혼을 하면 지금까지 우리가 봐왔던 결혼 생활은 굉장히 엄마들을 봤을 때 그게 힘들고 어렵고 그리고 굉장히 인권적으로 봤을 때 침해받는다고 생각해요. 실제로 우리나라가 여성 인권이 굉장히 낮은 편이거든요. 근데 실제로 우리나라에서 그 결혼을 하고 싶어하는 남자랑 결혼을 하고 싶어하는 여자랑 봤을 때 남자가 훨씬 높아요. 남자들은 결혼하고 싶어 해요. 남자들은 손해볼 게 없거든요. 여자들은 결혼하고 싶어 하지 않아요.
그러니까 이제 그 남자들한테 어떤 의료의 얘기를 어떤 걸 들었을 때가 가장 그 사바이자이 이게 했는.
나는 일을 했던 사람이라 너 일 잘한다 이런 소리가 제일 좋았어.
남자가 그런 얘기 해준 적 있어요?
내가 막 욕해 그러면. 성격이 이래가지고 또 얘기하면 욕해. 없어. 난 너무 좋다니까. 너도 혼자 살아보세요. 너무 좋아요.
Patriarchal ideas inherited from Confucianism were once a solid foundation in Korean society. But with the changing times, these ideas have had to be adjusted and adapted. At the core of this society, Confucianism remains a driving principle, except that the roles of men and women have become more flexible. In some families, women are the leaders, both inside and outside the home, and in some cases, the male-dominated society has begun to listen to these women. We may not be able to say fully that equality between men and women is happening in the real world, but for South Korean women, greater freedom has become a contributing factor in the decision to stay single. This kind of decision removes the problematic potential that comes with men, and yet stresses and pressures still come in other shapes and forms, especially if one is living in Seoul.
역시 서울에서 혼자 자취를 했었는데요. 그때 살 때 한 달에 월세로 60만 원, 그리고 그 방에 공과금으로 15만 원, 그리고 식비로 한 달에 60만 원. 네, 근데 이 식비 60만 원은 하루 2만 원 정도인데 하루 2만 원 해봐야 사실 먹을 수 있는 게 별로 없거든요. 네, 그리고 또 이제 회사나 아니면 뭐 아르바이트를 가거나 아니면 학교를 갈 때도 교통비가 들어가니까 교통비 15만 원에 뭐 커피를 마신다거나 담배를 핀다거나 그리고 핸드폰 요금까지. 네. 핸드폰 요금까지 이걸 다 내고 나면 서울 지역의 사회 초년생이 월 평균 급여로 받는 돈이 195만 원인데 그중에 33만 원이 남아요.
This is the cost of the conveniences in Seoul. But despite the high cost of living, Seoul continues to attract increasing numbers of people. It's gotten to the point now where Korean drama series are serving as trending propaganda machines, inviting young people to move to the suburbs or provinces. Of course, the beautiful, peaceful landscape, the colors of the fields, grasslands, and seas are in extreme contrast to the Seoul cityscape. Hong Dong-woo is the owner of Don't Worry Village, an educational program founded in the port city of Mokpo. It's not really a village, but a place for people to rest, relax, and find new courage. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to think about paying for food and condos. Hongdong-u intends for people to come here to escape from the stress of living in Seoul. The Don't Worry Village program is organized as a 6-week event for 60 people to be accommodated under the same roof. For these temporary residents, their closeness comes from releasing the pressures that have been building up from life in the capital. They get to absorb the provincial ways of life. They encourage each other by praising small accomplishments which would otherwise be overlooked. Hongdong-u wants this place to be one of rest and relaxation where people can go to sleep comfortably.
남자 여자 비율로 본다면
여자가 훨씬 많아요. 뭐 8대2 가까이. 네. 제 개인적인 견해로는 아무래도 제가 봐왔던 고객군에서는 여성분들의 이런 문화 생활 참여도가 훨씬 더 높고요. 남성분들은 낮아요. 왜냐하면 여성분들 같은 경우 한국에서 사실 어떻게 보면은 이제 군대를 가지 않고 남성분들은 또 군대를 가죠.
그렇죠.
네, 그래서 남자들은 군대를 다녀와서 굉장히 사회 진출에 있어서 적극적인 부분이 있어요. 사회 진출에 있어서 굉장히 좀 뭐랄까 심각하게 생각하는 부분이 있고요. 왜냐하면 아직은 다는 아니지만 모두가 그런 건 아니지만 아직 한국 사회에서는 되게 고리타분하게도 남자가 자기가 돈을 벌어야 되고 가장이다라고 생각하는 남자들이 있거든요. 지금 그런 성향이 이제 많이 없어졌는데 이제 아직도 이제 좀 그런 성향의 남자분들이 좀 많이 있고 그렇다 보니까 그들은 새로운 문화나 놀이에 관심을 가지기보다는 어떻게든 돈을 벌고 직장에서 일을 많이 하는데 좀 집중한단 말이에요.
In a patriarchal society based on Confucianism, we may see examples of toxic masculinity due to the pressure on men to be leaders and heads of families. Men must work hard as a result of the perception that this is their duty. They must bear the burden of strength. Even though men can also be followers, they can cry and show their fragility and sensitivity. Women may even have an advantage in this respect since they can show these emotions, opening the way for women to take part in a wider range of activities than men.
그래서 괜찮아 마을에서는 도널 빌리지에서는 중요하게 생각하는 게 그런 성소수자, 그러니까 또는 아니면 뭐 여성, 페미니즘 뭐 이런 것들에 대해서도 굉장히 존중하고 그것들이 그리고 또 저희도 공부하고 저희도 모르면 남자도 모르면 공부를 해야 되거든요. 공부하고 좀 그로업해가는 게 있죠. 우리나라에서는 그런 성에 대해 성소수자들이나 이런 것들이 다 발달하지 못하고 그리고 또 쉬쉬하고 그러다 보니까 이 성소수자들의 이 우울감이나 이 마음도 안 좋아서 자살률도 높고 어떻게 보면은
Hong Dong-woo tells us that the space in a low-scale hotel in Mokpo is used to set up the program Don't Worry Village. He gets to rent without pay for 20 years. Mokpo wants to attract young people so that this avenue can come back to life again. Mokpo is a small town with nice people, suitable as a place of refuge. This gallery owner comes from Seoul. He tells us that he previously thought of exhibiting in Seoul but could not afford a venue. But the space here is affordable and he can now display his works. Mokpo has become a town for people seeking to pay affordable prices to follow their precious dreams. They don't need to deal with the extremely high cost of living. This is a quality form of stress relief that South Koreans are now seeking. South Korea had built itself by pressuring its very own people, but too much stress will result in a very unhappy population. And if societal values don't change regarding women, it will be very difficult to envision a future in which men and women can grow and develop alongside each other. In the next episode, our Spirit of Asia team explores the places where women are the dominant landowners. Here in this land of kimchi, these women are happy to welcome us.
ฟู้ดเวิร์กสัปดาห์นี้จะชวนออกเรือไปตามหาปลาอุกกะแลซาชิมิปลาทะเลไทยที่บ้านตโนดน้อยจังหวัดเพชรบุรีครับนี่แหละคือสุดยอดของปลาดิบไทยของจริงคุณผู้ชมติดตามทั้งหมดนี้ได้ในรายการฟู้ดเวิร์กทุกวันอาทิตย์ 17:05 น.ทางไทย PBS เมื่อเช้าทำไมไม่ไปลงเรือ